We're very, very happy to have this program here tonight with Penny being our instructor. This is, for me, this is a very exciting one because I enjoy spending time looking out my front window and seeing the birds come and hang out. You know, they're feeding on plants. They they come in and they enjoy the water features that are in our yard, and they're very simple water features, you know. And each night, my husband and I, this is just kind of our entertainment. So, of course, we often think about what kinds of other plants would we like to include into our garden to attract more. So I'm looking forward to hearing Penny's talk as she gives us advice as to how we can create a wonderful garden to welcome wildlife. So thank you very much to the Master Gardeners of Napa County.
Thank you, Stephna. And to get us started tonight, I want to just, for those of you that haven't joined us before, let you know a little bit about who Master Gardeners are. And I am the coordinator for the Master Gardener Volunteer Program here in Napa County. And we have a wonderful group of volunteers. Let's see if I can figure out how to advance my slides. Sorry about that. So the UC Master Gardeners it's a volunteer organization. We are based here in Napa County, but we are supported through the University of California through the Cooperative Extension Office. So we have a mission to extend research-based information produced through the university, and then we have it to give out to the public and help home gardeners become more successful at gardening based on using that information. We have a wonderful website with lots of resources, and all of the slides you're going to see tonight and other resources are available on the website that's listed here. And we're also very excited to have our 25th anniversary this year. So 2020, even though there's a lot of terrible things going on this year, we are celebrating our 25th year at being in Napa with the Napa program. The Master Gardener programs are throughout the United States and definitely throughout California. Almost every county in California has a Master Gardener program. So we are here to help you as home gardeners, and it's wonderful to partner with folks like the library who can really help us get this great information out to you as the public. And we're really thankful that you were able to join us here today. So I'm going to turn it over to Penny now. And we are going to take questions at the very end. So if you have questions as we go along, you're welcome to type them into the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. You should be able to find a chat feature where you can actually submit questions, and then we'll deal with those as we go, as we get to the end of the program, and then we have a little time at the end. So go ahead, Penny. Thank you.
Hi. I'm happy to share with you my feelings and experiences on wildlife Master Gardener habitat gardens. I started mine about the time I became a Master Gardener, and over the years it has matured. I read that habitat gardening is also known as backyard restoration. And the reason for that is that just a lawn does not provide the things that your pollinators need, your little critters that live in your garden need, and the ability to get along with nature. And I read once that wildlife love messy gardens. So they've come to the right place with me. Next. Anyone can create a habitat garden, as this says, and it depends on what your facilities are. I saw one that was just a curbside garden. You can take a corner beside your house and turn it into a pollinator garden. There are lots of things you can do. Next, pollinators are probably the thing that has the most problem. And in order to help them, we have been encouraging pollinator gardens. And they must provide food, water, shelter, and places to raise young, which I will talk about in a few minutes. But also, we don't want you to use pesticides. They get into the food stream and they do poison the bees, butterflies, and other critters that live in your garden. Next. These are things that the National Wildlife Federation has put out about what you should consider when you're creating a wildlife habitat. They've got a new sign since I was certified, but I also am certified as a monarch garden habitat. I encourage all of you, if you're interested in having a wildlife habitat, to read everything you can get your hands on. Next. I'm going to introduce you to these two bees. They're only examples of the many native bees we have in our environment. The mason bee is one of my favorites. They look like a little black fly. They come out in March when the fruit trees start to bloom. And then when the fruit trees are done and they've pollinated them, they start making their habitat once again. They do not fly all year. I will explain to you in a moment what kind of habitat they like. The bumblebee is out for most of the summer. There are different types of bumblebees, but this one represents what most of them look like. Bumblebees nest in the soil, and it's very important to leave an area in your soil that does not have mulch on it or anything other than soil. And what they go into are gopher and mole runs, and they create a nest within there. They have cells that the queen lays her eggs in. She spends the winter by herself. Once spring comes, she lays her eggs. She starts foraging for flowers to feed her babies. And then they hatch, and she spends her time making more babies. Towards the end of summer, she lays eggs that turn into drones. The drones don't eat and they don't forage. They're just simply there to make another generation. She lays a bunch of eggs that should be queens at this time, and those queens take off and make new nests. I have seen them out from early spring till late fall foraging in my garden, and that's why you need to have flowers that last all year. Next. Next. Okay, this is what a mason bee builds her nest in. I have created my own boxes that look like that square that has AR on it. However, somebody was clever and drilled holes in the ends of logs, and you can see that they have some type of hollow reed down below that they can also build their nest in. What they do is the female goes in there, she leaves pollen, and the hole is almost as deep as that box. She leaves pollen, she lays an egg, and she builds a mud barrier. Then she does it again until they reach the end of the hole, and then she builds a mud barrier that seals it all up. And they stay in there for almost an entire year. They're only out in March and April when the fruit trees bloom. Bees, as I said, nest in the ground, but there are some that nest in different facilities. Honeybees, which are an imported bee, nest in hives. They were imported from Europe, and these bees that are native do not make honey. So that was one reason why they brought honeybees into the United States, was to make honey. However, they are having problems, and over time we've had to depend more upon the native bees that already live here, and they come in all sizes. Next. I wanted everyone to see a tomato hornworm. There's been a lot of comments on Facebook about what are these ugly creatures. Well, I raised them. And the reason I raised them is they turn into that beautiful moth you see at the bottom. The hornworm does eat on plants in the deadly nightshade family, which include tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and potatoes. However, they only do their damage for a few days. I raised 3 this year. I found them on my tomato plant and I put them under a jar and I kept feeding them tomato leaves daily. And what they do is when they're ready to pupate, become a pupa, they drill into the ground and then they don't come out until next spring. And if you look at this example of the hornworm, you'll see the little sucker legs on the body. Those disappear through metamorphosis. But the other little white spots up there at the head, those are the legs that you see on the moth. And right above that is the chewing mechanism. And that turns into what they put into exchange pollens between the flowers that they're going to. And they like nicotina, which puts out a scent at night, and they fertilize that. Next. This is my almost favorite butterfly, the pipevine swallowtail butterfly. And they are native to California. They're the only native pipevine we have in California. And the reason they're called pipevine is because of that little flower. The flower will be coming out in February. If you take Bay Nature magazine, or you can get it at the library, there's a very good article about Dutchman's pipevine and the flowers. The flowers are pollinated by fungus gnats. I thought it was fruit flies, but it's fungus gnats. They go into the flower and they get trapped in there for a couple days. And they fly around and they're gathering pollen. And then somehow they get out and they go to another flower and they do the same thing. So that's how your pollination takes place. The seed pods, I've tried to germinate them. They're extremely difficult. This is a plant that flourishes well after the rains of winter, but during the summer it's rather dormant. The pipevine butterfly itself pupates in March and April, depending on how warm it is. The picture is of a male, and they're about the same size as a monarch. The female does not have the blue on her lower wings like the male does. Most of these, I raise them in the house because I don't want anyone eating them. Most of these, when they lay eggs, there are about 8 or 10 eggs in a cluster, and I move them into the house. They hatch in about a week, and I know I have made a 5-week commitment to feeding these little devils and cleaning up their frass. And as they grow, they eat more and more, and sometimes I have to do that 2 and 3, 4 times a day. But at the very end, when they are ready to go into their pupa, they get walkies, as I call it, and all of the caterpillars do. They walk and walk and walk, trying to find the perfect place to build their pupa. I put them on cardboard. I mount them with museum paste so I can put them under my sunroom and they can pupate if I'm not there, because I have had some butterflies come out and fly around the house, and that makes it very difficult. I think there are about 35 down there right now waiting for March. Some of them do come out early, but this is part of their life cycle to only be a butterfly for a few weeks, a pupa for a year, and a caterpillar for 5 weeks. Next. This is another butterfly that I like. The Anise swallowtail butterfly eats, the larva eats things that are in the carrot family, such as fennel, carrots, and parsley. Their lifespan is a little bit different than the pipe-vine swallowtail. They lay the eggs individually instead of in clusters. So I am out there looking through all of this fennel trying to find the eggs. And then they hatch, and about 2 weeks later, they go into pupa. Some of them overwinter, and others stay in the pupa for just a few weeks. One thing about fennel is it is not a native. It has naturalized to California, and that has changed the life cycle of this particular butterfly. This is the same fennel you buy in the store and put in food, although I don't do that. I will tell you that gophers find it delicious also. I've had problems in that respect. Next. And this is the favorite butterfly of everyone, the monarch. They feed exclusively on milkweed. And all of these butterflies feed exclusively on foods, because specific foods, because they give a bad taste to the birds that try to eat them. The one with the big flowers is speciosa, and that one spreads by roots underground. It gets quite tall. The flowers are beautiful. The bees love it. And the other one is narrow-leaf milkweed, which is a native to our county. In fact, I got it from a farm here in Napa. This doesn't bloom until fall, which is usually when the monarchs are moving through Napa Valley. Unfortunately, we are not going to have monarchs in this year. There was a report out of Oregon that because of all the fires and the smoke, that they would be flying over it. These monarchs do overwinter along our coast, and they're in jeopardy as to their species because of the lack of milkweed. I'd encourage everyone to plant milkweed. Which brings me to another thing. If you buy milkweed from a nursery, it probably has had some type of insecticide fed to it, either by spray or by pellet, so that it looks really nice when you buy it. However, it will poison the butterfly, the larvae, kill them. And so I suggest that if you can, start it from seed. And there are instructions online that tell you how to start it as growing it out as a wet seed. So you soak it in water and it just germinates suddenly. Some of it has to be refrigerated because it needs a cold spell. But there is a lot of information online about monarchs. They lay their eggs individually on the leaves. They take about 2 weeks to become a pupa and 16 days from pupa to flying around. The one you see here in the picture is a female, and the way you can tell that is because the males have a pheromone spot on their lower wings. Next. Gulf literaries are about half the size of monarchs, and they are from the southern United States. However, they have been slowly moving into California. I raised about 6 of these this year. They love, and the only thing they feed on is passion vine. I have 4 passion vines in a row in pots, and they only go to one of them. There is a native passion vine, by the way, that is in California. Um, they take about 10 days to become a pupa, and this is a picture of the caterpillar. You can see it's orange. And then it takes about 2 weeks before they hatch into a butterfly. And they are beautiful. And compare them to the monarch, they're very similar. Uh, they lay their eggs individually also. Next. And now we're going to talk about birds. And these are the birds that, although these aren't my pictures, these are the birds that live in my yard. About 25 years ago, I realized that I didn't have any quail coming to see me anymore. And I read in National Wildlife magazine that they like piles of sticks. And so I built a pile of sticks, a big pile of sticks. And this year I had 3 couples that lived in that pile. They just carve out a nest for themselves inside of it. And one day I was out in the backyard and there were about 20 quail. That included the youngsters. I know when they start their honeymoon because they make sand baths in my vegetable garden beds, and I see them often moving around. They will eat your garden seedlings if they are given a chance, but they also love seeds. And every morning they make a parade from my neighbor's house to my house and into the vineyards because they like grapes also. Next. And the hummers. There are many hummers that fly through our area. Some of them are permanent residents. Others are just passing through. They come through in the summertime, they go north, and then they come back south in the fall. I wanted you to see the nests that they build. They do not go into nesting boxes. They build their nest on ledges. And they usually lay 2 eggs. And about the Memorial Day weekend is when they would come out and bring the babies to the feeders when we had feeders hanging. I want to mention to you that if you feed hummingbirds, please don't use the commercial food that has red dye in it, and please don't add red coloring to your feed because it can make them sick. We had one that lived in the house for several months because it broke its wing, and at that time I discovered that they also like fruit flies. So I would put little pieces of fruit in the area where we were keeping this bird, and it would eat them. It even sat on my finger, and we chased fruit flies. Their tongue is hollow, it's like a straw, and they suck the pollen out of the flowers. And to me, they're a joy to have around. Next. These are a couple of birds that are in the backyard, and I'm not covering all the birds. There's no way that I could cover all the birds that fly through Napa Valley. There are permanent residents like the crows and the vultures and some sparrows and the spotted towhee. These spotted towhees live on the ground under bushes and they eat seeds. There also is a brown towhee that lives in the same circumstances. This is a more showy bird than the brown. The California chickadee is one that moves up and down the coast. And these nest in very strange places. They also talk to you. I don't know if they come from some place where people feed them, but if I'm working outside, they always seem to come and chirp at me. They build, as I said, nest in strange places. I had a garbage can lid sitting upside down, and when I lifted it, there was a nest under it. Another time they nested in the insulation under my sunroom. And every time I go near it, they'd have a fit. There are tons of birds that live in this valley, and um, there are blue jays, there are mockingbirds, I just can't get into how many birds there are. Next. Here are two more birds. The linnet is a little small bird, chirps. This is a male linnet. The female is very plain. The male is very showy. They build a very small nest, and usually they try to be around the house. See, their name has house finch on it. And they like the seeds that come from your plants. The doves stay here all year, and every night, if I'm sitting where I can see them, they fly down to my fish pond in mass, have a drink, and then fly to wherever they spend the night. I have a garden window in my kitchen, and one day I was washing my hair and I looked up and there was a dove sitting on the garden window watching me. And then she brought her baby back. I guess it was a good show. But these are a game animal, unfortunately, and there is a hunting season on them. But they are a sweet bird. Next. I put the western bluebird in here, not because I've ever been able to get any to nest here, but several master gardeners have been lucky enough to get them. But I wanted to talk about the nest box. They demand a very specific nest box. And if you'll notice, there is no perch on that box. And that is because predators, other birds, owls, crows can go in there and grab a baby if there's a perch. They also require a certain size hole to go in and out. And I think other birds are the same way. I have put up birdhouses that have been up for quite a while, and I've noticed that somebody has been working to make the hole bigger. And I have had some little chickadees and other things nest in those birdhouses. But if you buy birdhouses and it has a perch on it, saw it off. Next. Now we're going to go into the plants that you need to use in a habitat garden. Excuse me. Whenever possible, you should use native plants, drought tolerant, flowering, or Mediterranean area plants. And the Mediterranean area stretches all through Europe, plus there's one in South America also. Yarrow comes in many colors, and it is perfect for birds and bees to nectar at. Butterflies like it also. And it is, for the most part, drought tolerant. And you can dry those flowers and put them in a vase in your house if you want to. Next. Manzanita is native to Napa County. In fact, there are many, many manzanitas. They have flowers in the spring. You can see the bee feeding at this. The hummers like to feed at them. And also they provide berries in the fall for those birds that eat berries. They have, because they're so dense, as you can see, these two are very dense. It's nesting places for small birds and quail. In fact, one time we had a quail who had his 3 wives living out in the front of our yard in one of the manzanitas, and he would visit them at night, and they would all sit together and chirp. And the wood on manzanita is beautiful. And as I said, it's native, and once it's planted and established, it doesn't need water. Las Pitas Nursery has a lot of information, and it will be in the resources on manzanita and types that grow well in various areas. Next. Toyon is a native to California, and some of these natives stretch into Baja California also. And the cedar waxwing is a beautiful bird that passes through um, our area. Um, they're about the size of a blue jay or blackbird. And as you can see, they like the berries, and there are flowers on them in the spring. And this is a drought tolerant native. Next. California coffeeberry is another native that is very good in a habitat garden, and it does provide the berries for birds to eat. Um, you can get these plants, a lot of them, at native plant nurseries. There's one in Santa Rosa, and there's also the Las Pitas, and I think there's one in Berkeley that you can go to. Next. I didn't realize there was a wild California grape. It has fruit on it also. Of course, it's not good for winemaking, or probably not taste good to us, but it does taste good to the quail and the other birds that like the fruit off of this. And look at the beautiful color it turns in the fall. Next. Ceanosis is one of the most spectacular things you can plant. There is a native species in Napa County. It grows on Atlas Peak. A friend gave us a pot of it once that he had dug up, and unfortunately, they are so drought tolerant that we killed it with water. My neighbor had one planted at the fence line for a while, and it looked like the bottom one. If you go in, you want to buy a plant for your habitat garden, be sure to do research on it, because they need different spaces, different soil types, and different habitats are suitable for different species of these. Next. California fuchsia is a wonderful plant. It gets about 2 feet high. It has silver foliage. I planted a gallon can and have never had to plant again. It has these wonderful flowers on it that the hummers and the bees like. There was a picture of a bee on one of these. They do self-seed, so I have them growing in a couple places where they weren't planted. This is something you should be aware of for all of these type of plants. They do like to spread themselves around. This is one of my favorite plants. Next. And every garden should have lavender. There are hundreds of different lavenders. Some are native species and others are hybrids. Hybrid means that they've bred two natives to create a new one. And hybrids cannot be grown from seed. They have to be grown from a cutting. The advantage of them, besides looking good and smelling good, and you can take the seeds and put them in a sachet, is that they don't take much water. The bees and the hummingbirds adore these, and if you have a sunny spot, I encourage you to plant lavender. Next. California buckwheat is not something that I've experienced, but I'm going to. I didn't realize it came in so many colors. It is a native to California, and look at, there's a honeybee and another, well, that could be a mason bee. Oh, it says mass bee and sweat bee. They do encourage the bees to come in and feed at and pollinate them. Low growing, easy care. Mexican sunflower is a member of the marigold family, which I was unaware of. If you go to Mexico, during Day of the Dead, the marigolds are in bloom everywhere. This one is a native to Mexico. However, the marigold itself was sent back by the conquistadors to Europe and has been hybridized. So the ones that you buy in the nurseries and the big box stores are usually hybridized marigolds. This one is an excellent plant to have in a habitat garden because it's great for pollinators, and we need to encourage all the pollination we can. Next. California aster is a native, and you'll notice there's a butterfly on it, there's a bee on it. It does give cover for little creatures to live in and is an important member of the habitat family. Next. Oh, before I forget, I also want to mention Santa Barbara daisy, which is a native plant. It tends to take over, but if you've got an area where you could leave it and not do anything to it, it is a good addition to a habitat garden. Sticky monkey flower is a native to our area. I understand there's some growing up on Mount St. Helena. I had a monkey flower summer where I was buying every variety I could find. These don't take much water, and they like an annual pruning, so you can cut them way back during the wintertime and keep them from getting too leggy, and the flowers are enchanting. The leaves of the sticky monkey flower are sticky feeling, but the hybrids, which are available and are sometimes multicolored, are not sticky. So, and I have never grown a hybrid in the ground because they require more water, but they are a good addition to your habitat garden. Next. And the sunflower. I was on a study for a while that they were doing, I think it was at San Francisco State, where you were supposed to plant a specific species of sunflower and see how many bees visited it during a specific period of time. These come in all sizes. They're great pollinators. They're called sunflowers because when they're young, they follow the sun. Once they start to mature and the seeds start to grow, they quit following the sun. Everything in your garden pretty much like sunflower seeds. And I had one that last summer I was waiting to cut off and dry, and it disappeared during the night. And somebody said, "Oh, I think a squirrel got it." So they like it too. They take it back to their little habitat. Next. Pyracantha is an imported, naturalized plant. One planted itself many summers ago, and I have never, ever given it water. It does bloom beautifully in the spring, and then it has those berries on it. And you have heard, I imagine, about the birds flying through in January and getting drunk on pyracantha berries. There is a component in there that makes them mildly drunk, and they seem to enjoy it. And these are berries that they really like to eat, and it gives them food in the wintertime. They don't eat them when they're green. They wait till they're red, and it's usually in January. Next. I want to tell you about hot lip salvia, but I also want to encourage you to have as many salvias as you can in your garden. The bees and butterflies and hummingbirds adore salvia. This particular one I have growing in my garden, and I started from a gallon can, and it's quite big now. When the bumblebees come up to feed on it, they don't go up to the mouth of the flower, they go behind it, and they drill a hole down into where the pollen is. A group of people who worked at Stribling's Arboretum in San Francisco were having a meeting in Mexico at some type of a restaurant or hacienda. And one night there was a bouquet of these put out at their table, and none of them knew what they were. They did not recognize this particular salvia. They brought pieces back, they slipped them, and it has become very popular. In fact, a couple of years ago, I was at a botanical garden in Dublin, Ireland, and I saw hot lip salvia. So they're making their way around the world, and they're very durable, don't take much water, and every so often I cut them back and they resprout and come up with new flowers. And it's one of the bees' favorite. Next. I have snowberry growing in my yard, and these berries do mature during the winter time. So they give them something to eat during the off season. They will plant themselves. So now instead of one, I have several. You can cut them back. I know that the gophers like them because where the gophers go, they are disappearing. But it is a good plant for your habitat garden. Next. One of the important features you need in your habitat garden is water. All the birds and butterflies and bugs need some water. In order to keep the mosquitoes down, I have gone to the mosquito abatement district, and they give you free mosquito fish. And the mosquito fish are interesting. They're not very big. They lay live young rather than eggs, which most fish do. And if they get hungry and there isn't enough food, they eat each other. But they do keep the mosquitoes down. I also have bowls of water in my garden area so that the birds do have water. And one of the things is right now with all of this ash, I dump that water daily and refresh it so that they aren't drinking ash. Also, male butterflies like a place where they can puddle is what it's called. They just want to get their feet wet. And I have one bowl that has rocks in it so that they can go in there and wet their feet and then fly off. Next. Here are some of the other critters who will visit your garden. Possums are the only marsupial in the United States. That means they're like kangaroos in that they give birth and the babies grow within a pouch within their stomach. The first time I found one, it was naked and I didn't know what it was. I thought I had a very unusual rat living in my yard. But I know the possums are around, and one of the advantages of possums is that they eat ticks. And we are asked to encourage them because of that. You know, ticks carry Lyme's disease, and that is a very serious condition. And birds carry the ticks, so these do help. Also, I know there's skunks. I smell them. And one night I was looking for my cat and I came face to face with one. It did not smell. It has a very cute little face, but everybody is afraid of that horrible smell. I have skunk lights around my water features so that at night if they come and get water, I realize that I shouldn't go out there. Next. I don't want you to be afraid of snakes. Snakes are a natural part of the ecosystem. Also, I don't have a picture of them, but so are little toads, little frogs, and bullfrogs. And I'll bet you didn't know if you put a bullfrog on its back, you can rub its stomach and it just pretends it's dead. I did have a black racer. I haven't seen her this year, living here, and she would like to go in my worm beds. She had babies, and I saw the babies walking or crawling around. I also have had gopher snakes. And when you see a snake that looks like the gopher snake, look at its head. I've lived here for a long time, never seen a rattlesnake. Seen a lot of racers, seen a lot of gopher snakes. The gopher snake that visited me this summer spent a day here. I don't know exactly what she was doing, but I saw her when she was leaving. I was working outside that day, and she had a bulge in her belly, so I think she came here to get something to eat. But these are both beneficial snakes, and there are some others that are beneficials also. Don't be afraid of snakes. Don't handle them, but just don't be afraid of them. The western gray squirrel is a native to California. Unfortunately, they also are a game animal. I've noticed that their numbers are not what they used to be in this area. They do nest in trees, they build elaborate nests, and they do feed on oak, acorns, and other things of that nature. They like berries and sunflowers. The brown squirrel is an immigrant to this area. I have a very bold one living in my backyard. He comes up and looks at me sometimes as if he's saying, "Where's the food?" Last week or the week before, I was watering. He took a shower on a very hot day, and then he spread eagled on a rock in my backyard, and it just ignored me. Next. I've only seen one fox in all the years I've lived out here, but I know that they do live in this area. They're nocturnal. I've also seen a very bold bobcat who walked down the street one day and looked at me as if to say, "I own the street, honey." There is a coyote that has been hanging around. This has been going on and off for years. I live near a vineyard, so they have lots of places where they can exist. Next. And the dragonfly is one thing I wanted you to be aware of. The first time I found a nymph was when we were cleaning a small pond with no fish in it. And we couldn't figure out what these were. And then one crawled out in a rock, and its back split open, and out came this beautiful dragonfly. Both dragonflies and their nymphs are ferocious enemies against mosquitoes, mosquito larvae and mosquitoes. So if you see these, encourage them. The dragonflies come in many colors, and they like to get in the fish pond or on top of the plants in the fish pond and just hover there and wait. Next. And in closing, I want to show you the California leaf-nosed bat. This is a native to California, and you can tell how small he is because he's in a human's hands. He has that little thing on his nose. That's where he gets the leaf nose. They also have the largest ears of bats in California. And bats eat thousands of insects every night. We don't see them because they come out after dark. I have seen them a few times. I built a bat house, or I bought a bat house. I followed all the instructions. It is facing north so that when the sun comes up, it warms it. There are no limbs of the tree around it. And it's been up about 4 years, and I've never seen evidence of it being occupied. And the evidence I would see would be bat guano. They like the eaves of barns and the eaves of your house, but I decided I did not want bat guano on my house. And so hopefully sooner or later, they will come to the bat house and raise their young in it. I wanted to also mention that the Master Gardeners are having a series on Sundays. And this coming Sunday, they're going to have a talk on how to plan your habitat. Remember, your habitat can be at your front sidewalk. It can be anywhere you have an area that you can plant the plant.
Okay, I seem to have lost Penny. Maybe she'll come back. I know she was having some internet problems earlier today, so I'll take over since we're on to resources. Thank you so much, Penny, for sharing all of your knowledge about your garden and all the wonderful creatures you find there. I'd like to open it up now to any questions we have. We do have all these resources listed. I know this is a pretty big list and maybe a little overwhelming, but we can, you can take a picture of it here if you want to with your phone. We'll also post this as a separate resource on our website. So you could go to our website after this presentation. In the next couple of days, we will get our postings up. And you can visit our website anytime to find resources as well as these slideshows, further resources and further slideshows. Previous programs are all posted there. So now I'd like to look at the questions in the chat and see if there's any questions that we might answer. I see a question here that says, do mason bees prefer a certain compass orientation for the front of the box? Really good question, Bill, thank you. But I don't know the answer to that. I would imagine that, like many things, they probably don't want to be hit by that hot afternoon sun. So I would guess, this is a total guess, that they probably would want to be oriented away from that hot afternoon sun, but I don't actually know. Cindy gave us a comment here that says, Penny is right that the hot lip salvia is very popular with the bees, birds, and hummingbirds. She said, I see hummingbirds going after it all the time. Before I could even get it into the ground, they were visiting it. How nice to know. There are some wonderful salvias, and that is certainly one that's very spectacular. We have that in our pollinator garden up in St. Helena, and it's always full of bees constantly visiting it. So does anybody else have any questions that we can answer for you? Please type them into the chat and I'll answer them for you. I had a couple more comments I just wanted to pass along. Penny had referred to the Great Sunflower Project, which is actually a really wonderful project. It's still going on. It's run through the Berkeley Bee Lab. So UC Berkeley has a large research facility that's working on native bees. And they started this project many years ago, giving a particular sunflower and having people plant that sunflower and then monitoring how many bees they saw and how many different kinds of bees. And they actually have a program where you can plant these sunflowers, then watch the sunflower for a certain amount of time and count the bees. And then any of the bees that you don't recognize or you want to get identified, they have members of their staff who will actually identify photographs. So it's a really fun project. You can just Google that or search for it under the Great Sunflower Project, and it's still going. It's an ongoing project. They have all kinds of great bee information on there as well. And Penny was mentioning that we will be having next Sunday, the third in our 4-part series of pollinator gardening, and that will be the focus on designing the garden. So we hope you'll join us for that one. That's this coming Sunday. You do have to go to our website and register for that to get the link. And we hope you'll join us there. And also next month, we'll be back here with the library on the first Thursday again. It's going to be November. Let's see, I'm going to look at the date here. November 5th. And our topic for that particular program is going to be house plants for health. So we're going to be looking at how house plants can actually benefit your health. And some of the house plants can do lots of great things for you. And I'm going to answer my phone. So type any questions, and thank you all for joining us.